Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hale stared at the panoramic view outside the Council's observation deck. Beyond the glass, the space station's artificial atmosphere shimmered faintly, revealing glimpses of the galactic core. It was beautiful and terrifying, like so much of what Marcus had encountered since humanity had joined the interstellar community. The room was quiet, save for the occasional hum of machinery. He glanced over his shoulder. Celera, the enigmatic alien counselor, stood nearby, her posture as serene as ever. She observed him silently, her luminous violet eyes unreadable. "You stare at the void as if it holds answers," she said finally, her voice soft but carrying an otherworldly resonance. Marcus turned back toward her. "It does in a way. When you're out there, alone in the black, you find a lot of clarity." "Clarity," she echoed, her tone neither skeptical nor convinced. An unusual choice of words. Most species find the void unsettling, not illuminating. "That's because they haven't had to wrestle with it the way we have," Marcus replied. "Humans lived on a single planet for so long that the stars became a symbol of possibility of everything we couldn't control. When we finally got out here, we learned pretty quickly that we couldn't conquer the stars. But we could survive in them, make a place for ourselves." Celera tilted her head, her shimmering silver hair catching the artificial light. "And do you believe you have made that place? Here, among us?" Marcus paused, considering his answer carefully. He hadn't been Earth's first choice as ambassador. A combat veteran turned reluctant diplomat, he'd accepted the role because he thought humanity needed someone out here who understood the stakes. But even now, months into his assignment, he still felt like an outsider. "Honestly, I think we're still trying to figure it out," Marcus admitted. "Humans are new to this, having a seat at the table with species who've been working together for centuries. I don't expect you to trust us right away." Celera's gaze flicked away, just briefly. "Trust is not the issue. The Council's concerns stem from unpredictability. Your kind's emotions, they are difficult to anticipate. They seem to defy the logic we've relied on to maintain order. And that's a problem? Potentially. For the Council, stability is paramount. To maintain the peace we have forged, every species must adhere to certain principles. Predictable behavior allows us to prevent conflicts before they arise. Your emotional volatility threatens that balance." Marcus leaned against the railing, looking back out at the swirling stars. "Volatility," he repeated. "That's one way to put it. But maybe what you see as a threat is actually a strength." Celera raised an elegant brow. "Explain." "Our emotions push us to adapt," Marcus said. "They drive innovation, creativity, and the desire to connect. Sure, we make mistakes, but we also learn from them. If the Council gave us a chance, really let us show what we can bring to the table, I think you'd see that humanity can be a stabilizing force, not a destabilizing one." Before Celera could respond, the observation deck's doors slid open with a gentle hiss. Another figure entered, Nas, a broad-shouldered member of the Avahan species. His skin, a pale, opalescent hue, reflected the light like polished marble. He strode over with the confident air of someone who'd spent a lifetime in politics. "Ah, Lieutenant Commander Hale," Nas said in a voice that carried both warmth and authority. "I see you're still here, contemplating our little corner of the galaxy." "Nas," Marcus greeted, nodding. "I didn't know you'd be joining us." "I wanted to speak with you before the next council session," Nas said, clasping his hands behind his back. "There's a proposal on the table, an initiative to standardize emergency protocols across all member species. I understand Earth's approach to crisis management is unique." Marcus sighed. "By unique, you mean chaotic?" Nas offered a faint smile. "I was going to say unconventional. The Council is interested in learning more about your methods, but some members are concerned that your spontaneous decision-making might lead to unintended consequences." "We've been handling emergencies our way for centuries," Marcus countered. "It might not always be pretty, but it works. And it's not just guesswork. We analyze, we improvise, and we adjust." "It's not about questioning your competence," Nas said carefully. "It's about finding common ground. A unified approach benefits everyone." Celera spoke up. "Perhaps it would help if Commander Hale provided specific examples. Something tangible to show the Council how human methodologies can complement our existing frameworks." Marcus thought for a moment, then nodded. "I can do that. I'll put together a brief on how we handled a few recent crises, humanitarian missions, natural disasters. It might not fit the Council's usual mold, but I'll show how our approach gets results." "Good," Nas said, his tone approving. "I'll look forward to reviewing your presentation. But be aware, not everyone on the Council is as open-minded as Celera and myself. You'll need to be convincing." "No pressure, then," Marcus said with a faint grin. Nas chuckled, then glanced at Celera. "Will you be attending the cultural exchange tomorrow?" Celera nodded. Yes, I'll be there. Excellent. I think it will be enlightening for everyone involved. And perhaps Commander Hale will see that the Council is not entirely resistant to human influence. With that, Nas inclined his head and left the observation deck. Marcus turned back to Celera. Cultural exchange? A gathering where member species showcase elements of their heritage, art, music, philosophy, Celera explained. It's meant to promote understanding and unity. Sounds like a good opportunity, Marcus said. I'll be there. Celera regarded him for a moment. I hope you find it worthwhile. The Council does not seek to suppress your people's contributions. We simply wish to understand them, and you. That's a good start, Marcus said, his tone thoughtful. Understanding each other. Maybe that's what it all comes down to. Celera inclined her head, her expression unreadable once more. Perhaps. Chapter 2. A Question of Trust. The diplomatic summit on Alarion Prime hummed with activity. Inside the sprawling crystalline pavilion that served as the venue, Marcus Hale stood at a circular table surrounded by members of the Galactic Council. Each representative came from a species with its own traditions, philosophies, and, most notably, unique perspectives on human behavior. The ongoing discussion centered on a pending trade agreement, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. Humanity's inclusion in these talks still unsettled many. Counselor Nas, ever the diplomat, leaned slightly toward Marcus. Lieutenant Commander Hale, perhaps you can explain Earth's approach to resource distribution. Some of the members find your methods unorthodox. Marcus met the gaze of the alien official. We're flexible. We analyze the situation on the ground, adapt to changing conditions, and find the best solutions as circumstances evolve. Across the table, another voice broke in, Counselor Vianney's of the Andarthi, whose long, feathered head crest glimmered faintly in the overhead light. What you call flexibility, others see as inconsistency. Our council values predictability, Commander. Inconsistent policies lead to instability. Marcus kept his tone calm. I understand your concerns, but adaptability doesn't mean we're flying blind. We base our decisions on careful assessment and experience. It might not look the same as the Council's long-established protocols, but it's effective. Before Vianney's could retort, Solara's voice cut through the tension. Perhaps it would be more constructive to consider how human adaptability could complement the existing framework. Change is inevitable. The Council's strength lies in its ability to incorporate new perspectives. Vianney's eyed Celera skeptically. You seem quite willing to defend humanity's methods, Counselor. Celera did not flinch. I am willing to explore all possibilities that strengthen the alliance. Dismissing a member species' approach outright would be short-sighted. The room grew silent for a moment, the tension palpable. Marcus resisted the urge to let out a relieved sigh. Solara's intervention had eased the pressure, but the doubt in the room was still thick. Nas clapped his hands together lightly. Let us reconvene after a brief recess. Perhaps some fresh air will lend clarity. As the council members filed out, Marcus found himself walking alongside Celera. The pavilion opened onto a vast terrace that overlooked Alarion Prime's crystalline forests. The colors shifted subtly in the light, creating a serene, mesmerizing view. Marcus couldn't help but admire the scene as they stepped out into the cool, fragrant air. Thanks for that, Marcus said quietly, glancing at Celera. I mean for backing me up in there. Solara's expression was as composed as ever, but there was a subtle warmth in her tone. I wasn't backing you up, Commander. I was advocating for a broader perspective. Your people's methods are unconventional, yes, but they carry a certain merit. I'll take that as a compliment, Marcus said with a wry smile. He leaned on the balcony railing, gazing out at the alien landscape. You seem more open-minded than some of the others. Celera joined him at the railing, her violet eyes fixed on the horizon. I've spent decades serving on the council. I've seen the challenges that come with introducing a new species to our alliance. Humanity's inclusion was met with more skepticism than most. Your emotions, your unpredictability, these traits unsettle some. But I've also observed that those same traits make you capable of remarkable insight and compassion. Marcus chuckled softly. Not sure everyone in there would agree. Celera tilted her head slightly. They will come around in time, provided you can continue to demonstrate that your methods do not threaten our stability. That's the plan, Marcus said. He paused, then added, I just wish it didn't feel like we're under a microscope all the time. Celera regarded him thoughtfully. Perhaps that scrutiny is the price of being pioneers. Humans are the newest members of this alliance. It is natural for the others to be wary. Wary is putting it mildly, Marcus muttered. He shook his head and pushed off the railing. Anyway, thanks again. I owe you one. Celera's lips curved in a faint smile. There is no debt. The Council's purpose is to understand and integrate all its members, not to exclude them. Marcus nodded, appreciating her steady demeanor. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, taking in the view. It was a rare moment of calm amidst the often stressful council sessions. Their quiet conversation was interrupted by Nas, who approached with a friendly wave. There you are. I thought I might find you two enjoying the view. Just taking a break from the fireworks, Marcus said dryly. Nas chuckled. Indeed. Some members of the council are more resistant to change than others, but I think you're making progress. Marcus arched a brow. You call that progress? Progress is rarely straightforward, Nas replied. But your presence here is already reshaping perceptions. With time, I believe even the most skeptical voices will see the value humanity brings to the table. Celera nodded in agreement. We must continue to engage in dialogue even when it is difficult. That is how trust is built. Marcus glanced between them, appreciating their support. Well, I'll keep showing up making my case. But if we're going to make this work, I'll need allies. Nas placed a hand on Marcus' shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie. You have allies, Commander. Don't forget that. Celera and I are not the only ones who see potential in humanity. Marcus looked back at the crystalline forest, the shifting colors reflecting the complexities of the council itself. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to navigate it. All right, he said, his voice steady. Let's see what we can build together. Chapter 3, Into the Depths. The ancient station loomed ahead, a massive structure adrift at the edge of neutral space. Its surface was dark and pitted, its bulk standing as a relic of a long-forgotten civilization. Marcus Hale squinted at the readouts on his console as the shuttle approached the main docking port. Beside him, Rakan Vault, a broad-shouldered engineer from the neighboring Dralian sector, leaned forward to peer through the viewport. Big place, Rakan said. His voice carried a rough edge, softened by years of camaraderie. I don't know how anyone thought it was a good idea to hide council records in a station that looks like it's one bad sneeze away from falling apart. Because it's neutral territory, Marcus replied, his hands steady on the controls. No single council member could claim it. The station's isolation made it the perfect vault until now. Rakan scratched his stubbled chin, his dark eyes flicking to Marcus. Still doesn't explain why they're sending a diplomat and an engineer to dig up ancient files. This is more of an archivist's job. They needed someone who could negotiate access with the station's autonomous systems, Marcus said. And you're here to make sure the whole thing doesn't blow up the moment we walk in. Rakan snorted. Fair enough. But if this goes south, I'm blaming you. The shuttle docked with a shudder, and the two men suited up in light environmental gear. Once inside, the station's interior was even more foreboding than its exterior. The air was stale, the lights dim, and the walls seemed to hum faintly as if the station were alive but barely awake. Feels like a haunted house, Rakan muttered, his hand resting on the scanner clipped to his belt. You sure this place is even operational? According to the council's records, the station's AI should still be functional, Marcus said. We just need to find the control center. They moved cautiously through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls. Every so often, a flickering panel or a faint mechanical were reminded them that the station wasn't entirely dead. But it was far from welcoming. After several turns, they reached a large chamber filled with ancient data servers. Rakan whistled low. That's a lot of hardware. Think the AI is in here? Let's find out, Marcus said, moving toward the central console. He pressed a few keys, and the screen blinked to life, displaying lines of alien script. Can you read that? Rakan asked, peering over Marcus's shoulder. Sort of, Marcus replied. The council provided a rough translation matrix. Let's hope it's accurate. As he navigated the interface, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was soft, mechanical, and faintly melodic. Unauthorized access detected. Identify yourselves. Marcus straightened, his voice firm but calm. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hale, representing the Galactic Council. We're here to retrieve archived records. The AI's response was slow, deliberate. Council authorization required. Please provide credentials. Marcus transmitted the authorization codes he'd been given, holding his breath as the console processed the data. A moment later, The screen displayed a confirmation message, and the voice returned. Credentials accepted. Access granted. Nice work, Racken said, clapping Marcus on the back. Now we just need to figure out how to find the right files. The two men got to work, sorting through directories that hadn't been touched in centuries. Racken's engineering expertise came in handy as they encountered corrupted sectors and fragmented files. Despite the station's ominous appearance, the AI seemed cooperative, guiding them to the most relevant data clusters. As they delved deeper into the archives, Racken started to notice something strange. "Hey, Marcus," he said, his voice low. "You see these file headers? They're all tagged with a name, Celera." Marcus froze. Celera? Yeah, looks like a counselor's name. Could be coincidence, but it's showing up on everything we're pulling. Marcus frowned, his mind racing. Celera had always been a mystery. She was measured, composed, and one of the few council members who showed any real interest in humanity's perspective. If these files were connected to her, what did that mean? "I'll ask her about it later," Marcus said, focusing on the task at hand. "Let's just make sure we get everything we came for." They continued their work, and as the hours passed, the station began to feel less foreboding and more familiar. The AI, while cautious, seemed almost eager to assist. Racken even started to joke with it, calling it Station, as if it were an old friend. "Station," Racken said at one point. "What happened to the civilization that built you?" The AI paused before answering. "The creators departed long ago. Their final directive was to preserve knowledge. I have followed that directive for over 10,000 years. Racken nodded, looking impressed. "That's a hell of a long time to be alone." "It was my purpose," the AI replied. "And now, you are here to continue the preservation." Marcus glanced at Racken. "You're making friends with the station now?" Racken grinned. "Hey, it's the least we can do. It's been sitting here all this time, waiting for someone to care." They finished their data extraction and prepared to leave. As they made their way back to the docking bay, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was just the beginning. The information they'd recovered might hold answers not only for the Council but for humanity's future in the Alliance. And the repeated mention of Solara's name raised more questions than it answered. Racken's voice broke through Marcus's thoughts. "So, what's next?" "Next," Marcus said, "we bring these files to the Council and see what they have to say. But something tells me this is only the start of something bigger." "Well, whatever it is," Racken said, "you know I've got your back." "Appreciate it," Marcus replied, offering a small smile. Together, they stepped into the shuttle, ready to face whatever awaited them back at the Council chambers. Chapter 4, Unraveling. The Council chamber was tense. The chamber's curved walls, adorned with intricate carvings representing centuries of interstellar cooperation, offered no comfort as the debate raged. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations filled the air with a cacophony of languages, some musical and others guttural, all translated in real time by the chamber's integrated interpreter systems. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the circular platform, arms crossed, while Nas and Celera sat nearby. The files he and Racken had recovered from the ancient station were projected onto the chamber's main display, lines of alien script scrolling down the screen as the Council analyzed the data. "The information from the station is incomplete," growled Counselor Vianney's, her feathered crest bristling as she gestured toward the screen. "The files reference strategic movements, resource allocations, and species vulnerabilities. How are we to know if these records are accurate or relevant?" "They're relevant," Marcus replied evenly. "You can see the timestamps on the data. This information predates the founding of the modern council, but it lines up with known historical even. Illuminate hidden risks that have persisted for centuries. If nothing else, it is worth studying them in detail." A rumble of agreement spread through the chamber, though it was far from unanimous. Counselor Vianney's frowned but leaned back slightly, her crest settling. "Fine, but I insist we review every fragment before making any decisions. If there is even a hint of manipulation or corruption, we discard it." Nas cleared his throat, his voice smooth and diplomatic. "That seems fair. We should approach this carefully. Commander Hale, how soon can we have a full analysis prepared?" Marcus glanced at the files, his mind already running through the logistical challenges. "A week at the earliest. The data's old and it's not in a format our analysts are used to. But if you give me access to a team of specialists, linguists, historians, cryptographers, we can make headway." Do it, Nas said with a nod, then turned to the assembly. In the meantime, I suggest we keep these proceedings focused on understanding, not accusation. Commander Hale and his team have taken great personal risk to bring this information to us. Let us not squander the opportunity. After the session adjourned, Marcus stepped out of the chamber with Celera and Racken close behind. Racken was rubbing his temples, his usually jovial demeanor dampened by the heated debate. I thought we were supposed to be working together here, not getting grilled over every little detail, he muttered. It's not personal, Celera said, her tone soothing. Some members of the council see change as a threat. They fear what they do not understand. That doesn't make it any easier, Racken shot back. 1 minute they're demanding we prove our worth, the next they're picking apart the evidence we risked our necks to retrieve. Marcus placed a hand on Racken's shoulder. Let it go. You did great out there, and you'll be even better when we start analyzing the data. Right now, we need to focus on the next step. Racken exhaled sharply but nodded. Yeah, I hear you. But I'm not giving them any freebies. If they want answers, they're going to have to work for them. Solara's lips twitched in a faint smile. Your determination is noted, Engineer Vault. I believe the council will come around, given time. The three of them made their way to the research facility where the data was being housed. Once inside, Marcus immediately felt more at ease. The sterile environment, the faint hum of advanced computing systems, and the sharp scent of newly activated equipment reminded him of the labs back on Earth. Racken sat up at one of the workstations, muttering to himself as he began decrypting some of the more corrupted files. Celera stood beside Marcus, her violet eyes scanning the projections on the central display. This data, she said softly, could alter the Council's understanding of its own history. But it will also place additional scrutiny on you, Commander. You must be prepared for resistance. I'm used to resistance, Marcus replied, though he felt a pang of frustration. What I'm not used to is this constant second-guessing. We're supposed to be allies. I keep wondering if the Council would have been this hard on anyone else. Celera tilted her head slightly, considering his words. Perhaps not, but humanity's recent entry into the Council has made some wary. It is not merely your methods they question. It is your motives, your passions, your unpredictability. Marcus looked at her, noting the faint warmth in her usually composed expression. Unpredictability isn't always a bad thing. No, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It is not. Before he could respond, Racken called out from his workstation. Hey Marcus, take a look at this. I found a reference to a council directive I've never seen before. It's marked as restricted, but it looks like it predates the official founding of the Alliance. Marcus stepped over, leaning in to study the screen. The file header was in an older dialect, but the Council's translation software rendered it readable enough. The directive appeared to outline an emergency protocol for species integration, a process that could bypass traditional vetting procedures in the event of a major crisis. Interesting, Marcus said. If this was active before the Alliance officially formed, it might explain how some member species gained their positions so quickly. Or why some weren't properly vetted, Racken added. This could be the leverage we need to show that humanity isn't the only species to challenge the Council's established norms. Solara's voice was measured but pointed. If you present this evidence, be prepared for a backlash. Some members of the Council will see it as an attempt to undermine their legitimacy. Marcus straightened, his jaw tightening. I'm not trying to undermine anyone. I just want a fair shot. If this directive proves that flexibility was once a core value of the Council, then maybe they'll start seeing humanity's approach as an asset, not a liability. Racken clapped him on the back. Well, I'm with you, Marcus. Let's dig deeper and see what else the station's secrets can tell us. Celera nodded. I will continue to advocate for understanding and cooperation within the Council. But remember, Commander, it is not only your methods that will sway them. It is your persistence. Marcus smiled faintly. Thanks, Celera. I'll keep that in mind. With a renewed sense of purpose, the three of them settled into their work. The hours stretched on as they pored over the files, deciphering fragments of history that had been hidden for millennia. Despite the challenges ahead, Marcus felt a growing determination. This wasn't just about humanity's place in the Alliance. It was about proving that diversity, adaptability, and yes, unpredictability, could strengthen the Council and its mission. Chapter 5. Exploring the Divide. The journey to Solara's homeworld, Arthes Prime, was uneventful, though Marcus Hale found himself preoccupied the entire way. Even after months of working alongside Solara in the council chambers, he had only learned fragments of her species' history and culture. Now he was about to step into the heart of it, an opportunity that both intrigued and unnerved him. The shuttle emerged from hyperspace over a blue-green planet dotted with sprawling cities that gleamed like precious stones. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, taking in the sight through the viewport. Beside him, Rakenvalt muttered a low whistle. "Now that's a view," Raken said, his hands gripping the armrests. "It's like someone carved out the countryside with a laser." Solara, seated across from them, gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The landscapes were shaped with great care. "My people believe that harmony between our structures and the natural environment is essential." "That's one way to put it," Marcus said, smiling faintly. "Your cities make ours look like a toddler's art project." "Humility is an admirable trait," Solara replied evenly, though there was the slightest trace of amusement in her voice. The shuttle descended toward one of the smaller cities, a cluster of elegantly curved buildings that seemed to rise organically from the ground. As they approached the landing platform, Marcus noted the lack of heavy industry or towering spires. Instead, the city appeared calm, balanced, as if it had always been there. Once on the ground, the group was greeted by a small delegation of Arathian officials. They bowed their heads slightly in greeting, their faces as serene as Solara's. The formalities were brief, and soon Marcus, Raken, and Solara were walking through the streets of the city. The air was crisp, the sounds of daily life muted compared to the bustling metropolises of Earth. Raken glanced around, his expression a mix of curiosity and unease. "Not a lot of noise here, is there?" "Arathians value quiet," Solara explained. "We believe it fosters clearer thought." "Guess that means no loud music," Raken muttered. "No," Solara replied, her tone making it hard to tell if she was amused or simply stating a fact. Their first stop was a public hall filled with intricate sculptures and tapestries that depicted pivotal moments in Arathian history. Solara guided them through the exhibits, her explanations precise and calm. Raken seemed less interested in the art and more fascinated by the way the other Arathians regarded them. He leaned close to Marcus at one point and whispered, "They're all so composed. Do you think they ever get mad?" Marcus smirked. "I'm sure they do. They just hide it better than we do." As they moved through the gallery, Solara paused in front of a particularly elaborate tapestry. It depicted a gathering of Arathians, their arms raised in what looked like a ritualized gesture. "This," she said, "is a depiction of the Concordance Ritual, an event that takes place once every century. It is when we reaffirm our commitment to emotional equilibrium and collective harmony." "Sounds intense," Marcus said, studying the intricate patterns woven into the fabric. "It is a deeply meaningful tradition," Solara said. "Through this ritual, we release our lingering emotional burdens and recenter ourselves." "Release your emotional burdens?" Raken said, his brow furrowing. "How does that work?" Solara's gaze shifted to him. "We undergo a series of meditative exercises and communal recitations. It is not something that can be fully understood without experiencing it." Marcus thought of the council's unease around human emotions. It was clear that Arathians approached emotions in a way that was entirely alien to him. "So you don't suppress your emotions? You just redirect them?" "Precisely," Solara said. "It is a matter of maintaining balance, not suppression. When emotions are allowed to run unchecked, they lead to disorder and conflict. But when channeled correctly, they can strengthen unity." Marcus nodded, filing that information away. He could see why the council placed so much trust in Solara's people. If humanity could learn to channel their emotions as the Arathians did, perhaps the council would view them in a different light. As the day wore on, they left the gallery and walked through one of the city's parks. The paths wound through perfectly arranged gardens, the air filled with the faint scent of alien flowers. Raken, to Marcus's surprise, seemed to relax a bit. "This place is peaceful," Raken said, his hands no longer fidgeting with his scanner. "I can see why you like it here, Solara." Solara inclined her head. "I am glad you feel that way. Peace is a cornerstone of our way of life." "And yet," Marcus said, "you chose to join the council to deal with the chaos and conflict of interstellar politics. Why?" Solara paused, her gaze steady. "Because peace cannot be maintained in isolation. The council is a complex and often tumultuous body, but it is necessary. If we do not engage with others, we risk losing our connection to the broader galaxy. Racken glanced at Marcus, then back at Celera. So you're saying it's worth dealing with the council's drama to keep the galaxy stable? Precisely, Celera said. And I believe humanity's participation in the council will contribute to that stability, once the others see what you can offer. Nice to know someone believes in us, Marcus said, smiling faintly. As they walked, Marcus and Celera fell into a quieter conversation while Racken wandered ahead, occasionally glancing back but mostly taking in the scenery. The park's calm seemed to encourage reflection, and Marcus found himself opening up. Back on Earth, he said. People don't think much about harmony. Most of the time it's about survival, meeting deadlines, paying bills, keeping things together. Balance feels like a luxury. Solara's expression softened slightly. I understand. Arathians have the advantage of a society built around balance from the beginning. But it is never too late to learn. Perhaps that is part of why you were sent here, to understand our ways. Maybe, Marcus said, his tone thoughtful. And maybe I can show you a bit about how we approach things. It's not all chaos and drama. Humans have a way of finding meaning in the mess. I would like to learn more, Celera said, her gaze meeting his. And I believe the council would benefit from understanding as well. Their conversation was interrupted by Racken, who waved them over to a small gathering of Arathians performing what appeared to be a quiet group meditation. Hey Marcus, come check this out. It's like a yoga class, but they're humming. Solara's lips twitched in the faintest smile. It is a communal alignment exercise. We use it to synchronize our emotional states. Think they'll let me join? Racken asked, half joking. They would not refuse, Celera said. All are welcome. Racken shrugged. Why not? Might as well get the full experience. Marcus watched as Racken joined the group, sitting awkwardly but giving it an honest effort. Celera turned to him, her serene expression once again masking any strong emotion. Your friend is quite adaptable. He is, Marcus said, folding his arms. And he's not afraid to jump into something new. As they stood together watching the group's synchronized motions, Marcus felt a strange sense of calm himself. He couldn't say whether it was the setting, the company, or simply the novelty of it all, but for the first time in a long while he felt like there was no immediate crisis to handle. Just a quiet moment shared with allies who might one day become more than that. Chapter 6, At the Crossroads. The council chamber was a sea of tension. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their curved, tiered seats, their holographic nameplates glowing faintly before them. The main screen displayed data files pulled from the ancient station, lines of text flickering as analysts presented their findings. In the center of the circular floor stood Marcus Hale and Rackenvault, facing the assembly together. Celera stood just behind them, her hands folded calmly as she prepared to speak. Marcus took a step forward. Esteemed members of the council, he began, his voice steady. You've reviewed the data we recovered. You've seen the records that reveal the council's early struggles, the flexibility your predecessors demonstrated in forging this alliance. I'm here to argue that humanity's approach, our adaptability, isn't a threat to the council. It's a strength, one that helped your ancestors succeed. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some counselors nodded thoughtfully while others exchanged skeptical glances. The Andarthi counselor, Vianney's, whose feathered crest was even more vibrant under the chamber's light, leaned forward. Commander Hale, your argument rests on the assumption that our predecessors' decisions were universally accepted. They were not. Many records from that time are inconclusive or contradictory. How can we be sure that the flexibility you champion will not lead us down a path of instability? Before Marcus could answer, Racken spoke up. With all due respect, Counselor Vianney's, you've already seen how human adaptability works. It's what allowed us to establish trade agreements with half the member species in record time. It's what let us respond to that asteroid crisis last month when the protocols were still under debate. We're not just making things up as we go. We're using what we've learned, improving, and sharing it with you. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Counselor Nas, ever the diplomat, interjected. It is true that humanity's methods have produced results, though not without raising concerns. I propose we hear from Counselor Celera. She has worked closely with the human delegation and may provide valuable insight. All eyes turned to Celera, who stepped forward with practiced grace. Her luminous violet eyes swept over the assembly. The records we recovered, she began, are not perfect. They contain gaps and contradictions, as Counselor Vianney's noted. But they also show that the council was not always a body of rigid procedure. In its infancy, it adapted quickly to challenges, finding solutions that no single species could have conceived alone. Her gaze shifted to Marcus. Commander Hale and Engineer Vault represent a different perspective, one that is sometimes uncomfortable but also vital. Human adaptability does not mean chaos. It means growth, the ability to adjust to new circumstances and find creative paths forward. It is a quality that many of us, myself included, could learn from. Solara's words hung in the air. For the first time, Marcus felt the tide shifting. Counselors who had previously dismissed him now seemed to consider his points more seriously. Counselor Vianney's, however, remained skeptical. Creative paths forward, yes. But at what cost? If every member species adopted such an approach, would we not risk the integrity of the council itself? Solara tilted her head slightly, a calm yet firm response ready. Counselor Vianney's, the integrity of the council is not maintained by uniformity. It is upheld by mutual understanding and cooperation. The data we recovered shows that diversity of thought strengthened our predecessors even if it made their path more difficult. Humanity's inclusion presents us with an opportunity not to abandon our principles but to expand them. Racken leaned closer to Marcus and whispered, "I think she's got them thinking." Marcus nodded, then spoke aloud. "If you want a concrete example of what we're talking about, look at the asteroid deflection mission." The Council's procedures were still being debated, but Earth's team, working with Dralian engineers and Arathian analysts, found a solution in hours. The data shows that the Council's early members took similar risks when faced with immediate threats. If we dismissed that history, we risked forgetting what made the Council strong in the first place. Counselor Noss raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "I believe we've heard enough arguments to proceed to a vote. The question before us is whether humanity's methods, as demonstrated in the records and recent events, should be considered a legitimate approach within Council operations." The chamber grew still. Holographic voting panels appeared before each counselor. One by one, they cast their votes, their faces unreadable. Marcus and Racken exchanged a glance, both men standing tense but resolute. Solara remained perfectly composed, though Marcus noticed the slightest shift in her posture, a sign that even she was not immune to the weight of the moment. The voting concluded. Noss stood, his expression neutral. The results are as follows, a narrow majority in favor. Humanity's adaptive methods will be recognized as a legitimate approach, to be reviewed and refined in future operations. Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him. Racken let out a low whistle, muttering, "Well, I'll be damned." Solara stepped forward, her calm demeanor unchanged. "This decision is not the end of the discussion. It is the beginning of a new chapter for the Council. We must continue to work together to ensure that adaptability strengthens us rather than divides us." As the chamber began to empty, Marcus turned to Racken. "You were great in there." "Me? You're the one who convinced them," Racken said, grinning. "I was just the guy who fixed the broken files." "Don't sell yourself short," Marcus said. "You had my back out there, and that made all the difference." Solara approached, her expression as steady as ever. "Commander Hale, Engineer Vault, you both handled yourselves well. Today's outcome, Ma." Aid quietly. Her gaze softened just enough to be noticeable. "You underestimate yourself, Marcus. Your voice carries weight not because it is loud, but because it is genuine. The Council will come to see that in time." Racken cleared his throat. "So, what now? Do we pop champagne or whatever fancy drink they have around here?" Marcus chuckled. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's still a lot of work to do." Solara nodded. "Indeed. The real challenge begins now. But I believe we are better prepared to face it together." With that, the three of them left the chamber, stepping into the wide hallways of the Council's headquarters. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time it felt like they were walking it as equals.